Look, on Leadership Now, I promised never to do commercials, but here we are. Why? Well, I have a new book in the works. It's coming out spring 2026, and I wanted to give you an advance heads up about it. The title, The Future of Work is Gray, and it's kind of a big deal to me because the book dives into the age crisis that's reshaping work as we know it. It's something that I call age debt, but spoiler alert, it does turn into some solution. There's some hope, there's some positive, and that's called the experience dividend. So if your workplace still thinks that age is a liability, well, it's time to retire that mindset. In fact, we might want to retire the word retire. So yeah, I don't do ads. This is a special occasion, and for it, I am willing to go gray. And maybe Grey Goose will sponsor me, not sure. Anyway, spring 2026, the future of work is gray. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Leadership Now with me, Daniel Pontifrac. Today in the house, a really now good buddy, I would say, Shakeel Bharmal. Shakeel, it's so good to see you. Thanks for being here. A short but very good bio, and then we're going to go right into it. So, Canadian business and nonprofit leader turned executive coach, Shakeel specializes in helping leaders navigate transformation with equal parts rigor and civic purpose. He serves with Ivy Executive Education as an executive coach and instructor. He draws on more than 25 years of experience around strategy, sales and marketing, ops, execution, and various general management pieces. Shakeel also spent 7 years as Chief Operating Officer at Agacon Foundation Canada. His portfolio spanned many things, including resource development, partnerships, program enablement, and all of that connecting Canadian donors and others and firms with development outcomes across Asia and Africa. Prior to that, as GM in global logistics and a director of marketing and sales effectiveness at Purolator, he led the growth and turnarounds that really fused customer strategy with on-the-ground execution. He's also the founder and CEO of Ocean Blue Strategic and a senior leader with the Summit Group, where he advises executives on customer value creation, revenue growth, and leadership culture. His teaching and facilitation extend to the undergraduate and graduate classrooms, as well as executive cohorts, which gives him a very, I would say, panoramic view of how leaders learn at different stages of their careers. He's obviously involved in the community. He's been serving as president of the Ismaili Council for Ottawa and as a national ambassador for the World Partnership Walk, one of the country's largest public campaign for international development initiatives. He holds an MBA from Ivy Business School, where he graduated as valedictorian, and he's based in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Shakeel, so good to have you here. Why I say become a friend, because you and I are co-authors of a particular program for a particular organization in Canada. And I've learned a lot from you over the last 3-4 years or so about how you think, but what matters to you when it comes to leadership. So I'm going to replace some of your words first, and we'll get into a dialogue about that. So when leaders create the right conditions, and some of those conditions that you refer to as things like curiosity over judgment, deep listening, empathy, one of our favorites, relevance to others, vulnerability, ownership of mistakes. What I loved one of your phrases is elegant simplicity, and then learning from each and every different experience that a leader gets to go through. So with all that in mind, kind of like almost like your value props as a strategic leader, what are we getting right these days in leadership land? And what are some of the impediments that you see that they're still kind of roadblocking leaders to fulfilling some of those value statements that you believe in?
It's a great question. When you asked me what are we getting right, I remember very early in my career, before I was a manager, back in the late 90s, I felt like I didn't fit in the workplace. I felt like I didn't fit business.
Mm.
There was a lot, I would say there was a lot of a view that success in leadership was really around bullying and intimidation and a lot of this kind of hardcore culture, work hard, play hard, the things you do after work together with the guys was a really important part of it. And I often felt like I didn't fit. And then as time has ticked on, all of a sudden I woke up one day and maybe it was just like maybe just 7, 8 years ago, where I felt like slowly over time things have changed in the business world, where all the things I really believed from the beginning, the words you said, empathy, relevance, helping each other, really understanding what makes people tick, all those things became like the way to lead.
Mm.
And so I think those are things we're getting right. And I think it was reinforced for all of us during COVID. And coming out of COVID, we've retained some of it, which is really like create safe space for people to engage, make sure the quieter voices in the room have a
Mm.
chance to contribute,
Yeah.
uh, really ask the questions why something matters to somebody rather than just directly answer the question or the issue. Take the time to dig deep. I think we're getting those things right. And despite the forces in the world that might suggest otherwise, I still think those principles of leadership are still going to stand the test of time.
Hmm. Well, let's challenge that just a little bit for a second
Sure.
here. So, as you say, I do agree. Like
Yeah.
many of those principles you're alluding to have taken shape in sort of almost like as you being prescient, where these are things where you didn't fit, and I would agree that I didn't fit either. Both of us
Yeah.
sort of are um, common we have a common language that you and I are speaking. And so going into COVID, I think individuals like you and I, not tooting our horn, but we were ready for our COVID because
Yeah.
naturally our leadership disposition was as such, being relatable, empathic, and so on. So post COVID, here we are 5 years later. Do you see any tremors that are occurring? And where I want to go with this, somewhat obviously,
Yeah.
is recent-ish discussions about hauling people back into the office 5 days a week, a little bit more perhaps focusing on how do we extract costs out of the organization from things like AI and so forth. Like I'm just curious, like do you see
Yeah. No,
tremors
that's
afoot?
fair. Yeah, that's fair. That is happening for sure. I haven't directly come across um people being forced back in the office, like one-on-one interactions with people being
Mm,
forced back in the office, but certainly I know it's happening. I can certainly saw it in downtown Toronto when I was there last week. Downtown is busier for
yeah.
sure. So I would say yes. I think the idea of using the word force in any circumstance, not a good sign, right? If you got people that don't want to be in the office 5 days a week and they have demonstrated that they can actually produce more, do their jobs, but be whole people by staying home part of the week, I really think we should allow it to happen. I do think that the hybrid is the way to go. Hybrid can't. It's very difficult to crack that code, but it's definitely something to be pursuing as opposed to just going back to our old behavior. I
Mm,
think the idea of just going back to the old behavior tells me that we haven't learned anything. And so that is a tremor. You've nailed it. I think that's absolutely true. I think another tremor is um, how do I say this? We've benefited a lot from the use of virtual.
yeah.
Right? Virtual's been great because you can engage at a drop of a hat. What used to be just a conversation by the phone or text is now a bit richer of a conversation. And we saw a big swing towards not doing live events, live gatherings because virtual was available. So when things opened up a little bit more, I saw organizations go back to the live, being in the room together a lot more.
Mm,
But then after that big swing, it feels like there's a bit of let's go back to virtual. And it comes across in my way when it comes to event budgets and training budgets and all that type of thing. Is there's now a resistance, and it comes back to that cost thing. Because we have virtual, why don't we just do this virtual? I think there's still a need to get together live in person in the room, where relationships develop, side hall conversations happen. So I do see some of that slipping back as well. And then of course you are seeing some examples of some real tough, hardcore behavior where through examples of leadership in various political circles around the world, we are seeing leaders being tougher, being much more regimented, um, speaking toxically. And I do see a little bit of that creeping into legitimizing some leaders that also behave that way. It's not a big thing yet. I'm worried it's going to become bigger if we don't keep it in check.
Mm. I'm not going to throw a Canadian flag yet on both of us, but I want to come back eventually to, is there a place for Canada, potentially both you and I living and being Canadian, to play in a world of sort of leadership, diplomacy, and almost empathy? One of the things you speak of and do very well is about value creation and capture. And I'm curious if like various studies like Deloitte, I think it's like 3% are very effective at capturing value and what workers create. You're so good at sort of that notion of like the whole is greater than the individual parts, and you're such a pro collaboration, pro teamwork, pro all that. If you look back between some of your roles and the organizations you work with, and sort of now with kind of strategic consulting you do and the companies and the organizations you get to work with, how do you see, I guess, mindsets or methods or behaviors having changed for the good? And again, are there some stubborn kind of bits in the way on how we utilize employees, other team members, leaders, et cetera, to actually value that creation that we want from them, but sometimes, as they say, like maybe that's getting in the way.
Yeah, yeah. So if let me rattle on a bit about how I think what the question you're
Yeah,
asking is. Over time, I have seen, I mean, whether you call it solution selling or, problem selling, whatever you call it, there has been a shift to organizations and individuals being much more curious onto others' issues, problems, and not trying to sell a product, but actually trying to understand what somebody's problem is and then coming up with a solution, which might include a product to sell.
yeah.
So that's been happening. Now, um, the opposite tension to that is while organizations fund that kind of mindset training and skill set development, organizations are still driven by ROI and all the metrics that come with being publicly traded or being owned by a company that's looking for returns. So the talk and the investment in that training mindset doesn't seem to match the actual day-to-day leadership. So I'm seeing some of that slippage, even though we've trained people to think about the customer, to understand their issues, to be curious, to be relevant. Yes, do that, but also meet your target for next quarter. And ideally, over time, they should go together. But
Hmm.
sometimes by pushing the target in the next quarter, you're actually forcing people to not spend the time to be curious and understand issues and all of that. I
Hmm.
believe you can do both. But it needs to be an integration instead of just do this and this, you need to do them together. And I think that's being missed a little bit. The point around collaboration, I think, is a really important one. I'm doing a lot of work with organizations today that have realized that the business world of their customers are so complex that they, as individuals, do not have the expertise, the ability to solve everyone's problem. They
Hmm.
need to engage their organization. They need to engage experts in their organization. The problem is they haven't figured out that in order to get the people in their organization engaged to help them solve the customer's problems, they also have to deliver value to their internal partners. And so value creation is not just about value creating with customers, it's about value creating inside your organization, which also means you have to get with your colleagues, understand what they care about, understand what their priorities are, help them achieve their priorities in order for them to help you do what you're trying to do with your customers and achieve your priorities.
Well, this
And I
segues
don't
really
think
nicely. It segues nicely to something that you do so well, and
yeah.
I'm curious now, both on the internal and the external. And I'm not, without me recanting what it is by definition, but I wanted you to delve into sort of your theorem of my customer's customer,
Um,
and from the vantage point of just that, where my customer's customer could be internal, i.e., like the stakeholder, or a team to a
Yeah.
team, something happening collaboratively inside the org, but also obviously touching this on the external side when people
Uh,
are dealing with their customers.
it's become my code of living, to be honest with you, and it encapsulates so much about our relationships. So I want to give credit to where I first learned it, because it is something I learned in my own development with the company I work with called the Summit Group, and it's called third box thinking.
Mm,
Very simple framework. Traditionally, whether we like to admit it or not, we tend to approach the world, the people in our lives, the customers we deal with, we tend to approach them from a point of how we see the world, what we want for ourselves, and our general approach to the world is, how do I get other people to do what I need them to do? How do I get them to buy the product I'm trying to sell? How do I get them to help me meet my target? How do I get them to help me feel validated? It's my view on the world, and how do I get other people to support me? Most people don't like to admit that, but that's generally our frame, because we look at the world from our eyes.
yeah.
We've been taught over time to try at least to look at things from the perspective of the person you're supposed to serve, right? The problem is, when we step into their shoes, we are looking at the world, we're looking at what they need, but still from the lens of what we offer.
Mm.
And so our scope is very limited. So yes, we're trying to be focused on them, but we're only focused on them to the extent to which we think it's relevant to us.
I'm assuming though that's an unintentional bias, right? Or
No, it's not
is it?
intentional bias. We
Yeah,
can help it, right? We come
right.
to the world with our encoding and with our perspective. And yes, we're focused on them, but we can't help it. We've got our lens.
Mm.
So the idea of focusing on the customer's customer, which means skipping over the person that you care about and jumping to the person that they care about. When you put yourself in the shoes of, let's call it the end user that your customer or your important person serves, you're now looking at the world from their perspective, and you've removed yourself by two steps from yourself. Now you're forced to put yourself in the shoes of the end user and think about, what do they want for themselves?
Mm.
What are they seeking? What's their challenge in life? What's their world look like? And then you ask the question, okay, so based on that, what is my customer trying to do for them? Now you're like removed yourself from what you care about. You're living in your customer's world and the world of the people they serve. Then you can say, now that I understand what they care about, now let me look at what I can bring. What do I have that's relevant? How do I add value? So it's a bit of a mental mind trick, really,
Mm.
to
Yeah.
just take yourself out of your box and go as far away from you as possible. And it's called third box thinking. It would be $4, $5, $6. There's some pretty complicated value chains in the world. But the point is, get yourself out of your world and get into the world of the people at the end of the day you're trying to impact and help.
And I guess in one of those examples, though, when you do figure out, well, what is it that I can bring that customer so that they can help their customer or their stakeholder, however you want to define it, there's then the self-regulation, if you will, the self-assessment of like, well, maybe I don't have what they need. And so now my collaboration skills, my networks, my net worth, the idea then to go find other people to help out is kind of key.
You nailed it. You nailed it. So you serving others is not just you giving them something you have.
Hmm.
It's you serving others means, hey, you have a need that I can't fill, but you know what? I have relationships. I have research skills. I get along pretty fine at learning things for myself. So now let me use those skills in your service. So I may not be a real estate agent. You need to sell a property, but boy, I know a really good real estate agent, or my brother-in-law knows a really good real estate agent. Let
Hmm.
me make that connection. That's a simple example, but that's the idea.
So tangentially, but it is the elephant in the room. When we talk about artificial intelligence, how is AI helping value creation, third box thinking, sort of thinking about my customer's customer and the empathy piece? And again, the obvious additional question would be, well, what not what hinders it, but what are we maybe overcompensating with potentially in this human to human relationship bit when companies are introducing whether it's generative AI or other bits of the ecosystem?
Yeah, I love this because I'm using AI quite a bit, and I'm also introducing it in the classroom is to help people think of ways to actually become more empathetic and more relevant.
Cool, do tell.
Right? Because that for me, that's the worry, obviously, that people will lean into it, form relationships with an AI instead of using it to actually build deeper relationships. So
Hmm.
quite simply, using the same third box thinking frame. If you are serving somebody, let's say I am in private wealth and I serve clients, individual clients, and I want to understand what they care about. Uh, I could go to an AI, create a persona, and say, give me a persona for an individual, wealthy individual that owns this kind of business, that has this many children, is in this stage of their career. Tell me what are some of the things that you might care about.
Hmm.
So now you start putting yourself in the shoes of that client, saying, what do they care about? And then you can have a dialogue saying, okay, if that's what you care about, what are some questions I could ask you to really uncover what drives you in this world? What's important to you? So now you turn that information into questions that you can then go to the real person and ask.
Hmm.
Really simple thing to do, but I'm giving you an example of a way to use AI to actually strengthen your ability to drive your curiosity with a person that you're engaging with and dealing with. Sometimes we get intimidated to meet people that we know nothing about. This is kind of like a warm up exercise to prepare yourself to go meet somebody and be really curious.
Wow, it's kind of providing you with proactive insights and a way
Yeah.
in which to then enter into conversations, right, which you may not be
Yeah.
fully versed in prior to.
Yeah. I mean, it speaks to the research that I've been involved with that says any a buyer that you go and meet, they recognize very quickly when you ask them questions, they recognize very quickly that your questions are slanted towards information that then allows you to talk about yourself and your product,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so this exercise using an AI tool, like recognizes that's a human bias. We can't help it, right? We talk about the things we know about. So this tool says, let me not talk about the things I know about. Let me be curious based on what might matter to the other person. So if I
Hmm.
don't know what might matter to the other person, I might not even know what questions to ask. So let me develop a persona using the AI about a person that I might meet. It won't be 100% right. And then ask it to generate a few questions I could ask.
Hmm. I love
Some
that.
people call it a crutch. Some people say, oh, come on, we're losing our own human ingenuity and curiosity and all that stuff. I think sometimes we need a little help, right? And so this is a great way for those people that don't actually feel like they can readily call on those questions. And then ultimately they can do it themselves, but it's a little bit of a crutch.
You know, back in grade A, I used to take home like the C's or the F's or the H's of the encyclopedia, and I'd take that home for the weekend and try and learn as much as I
Yeah,
could about the
yeah,
H's, right? So I get it. Like, how do you find ways in which to address the void of you not knowing enough about something so that you can be well versed? And I think this is
yeah,
where a catalytic conversation like this with an AI is very
yeah.
helpful. I totally agree from an empathy and understanding and relatability and awareness, et cetera. So, however, there's the, well, Shakil, what are you worried about potentially, whether it's value creation, the customers kind of theory, the sales cycle, anything within your realm? What do you see as potential pitfalls in the future?
I'm worried at the very basic level. I'm worried that people will have an engagement on the AI and literally cut and paste the answer they get and stick it in a proposal and send it off.
Yeah.
And not read it, not think about it, not turn it into their own language, not question it, um, just to get the numbers, right? Just to get, let me get 10 proposals out the door, and this is the way I'm going to do it. Cut and paste, cut and paste. That's the biggest thing I'm worried about.
With
Um,
that,
I,
with that last line in the proposal that says, "Do you want me to go deeper on section
yeah,
5?"
yeah. Can you imagine? You forget that. I've had
Yeah.
people actually send me text messages, condolence text messages, that at the end it
Oh
says,
no.
would you like me to turn this into something you might write in a letter or something like that? But it's so easy to do that with these AI tools that I'm worried. I actually think we should use AI to work harder.
Hmm. What do you mean?
I think we should use AI to ask more difficult, deeper questions, develop greater knowledge about industry issues, um,
Hmm.
challenge our thinking. Like some of the really great prompts that I've seen being shared on LinkedIn, there's a great source of them. Things like a simple tip: when you do a prompt in AI to ask AI to do something for you, in the prompt, ask the AI to ask you 5 questions that will allow you to think deeper about this issue. So that now you have the AI interviewing you to support your own thinking. You provide your own thinking back into it. And now you're having a dynamic conversation, but you're using the crutch of the AI to ask you the questions. So it's like, what's that old Jerry Maguire thing? Help me help you. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, help me help you so I can help you help me. Right.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
That's the pattern. Right. And so I think just using AI to push yourself to think more deeply, and I think is a real powerful tool.
So, okay, related to all this is your work and thinking on strategy. And so I want to dovetail into this a little bit. And that's when you think about strategy, and what comes of strategy is typically, well, I'm paraphrasing, but let's cook up an idea of where we want to go. What's the delta gap, and how do we get there? And then there's this transformation. So the change has to happen between where we are and where we got to get to. So I don't want to get into strategic thinking in the terms of how do you get to the strategy. I'm curious about your thoughts on what we're doing right, what you think is going right, where we're still hitting some of those hiccups during the transformation to get to said new strategy. I'd love your thoughts on some of
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
pros
Look,
and cons.
again, simple tools. So when I do a strategic planning session with a client, I will ask all of them to answer a number of questions about their business
Mm,
individually. I'll ask each person individually to answer a bunch of questions about their business. Things like, what do you see as some of the headwinds facing your business? What do you see as some of the tailwinds of things that are working in your favor? What are some of the things that your customers are saying? What are some of the things that you're worried about from a competitive standpoint? So I'll
mm.
ask them those questions, but they just have to write off the top of their head. So if I take all of that insight in a firewall protected AI, I take all of that from the individuals and I put it in, it'll give me a good summary of some of the what's going on in the organization, how people think about it,
Kind of like trend lines.
trend lines. I'll also ask it to highlight conflicting perspectives from different people in the organization.
Nice.
Now I can take that instead of spending time in the session drawing out all these perspectives from the room. I can share back with them. Here's the trend line, and actually, here's some of the things you agree on. Here's some of the things you disagree on.
Mm.
Now we can have a conversation about. Let's talk more about that disagreement,
Hmm.
because the real opportunity with strategic planning exercises is not just marching through a logical process. It's about digging into the genius in the room and creating a space where individuals in the room can actually be more creative than they ever imagined they could be, and kind of accelerate the alignment and trust building and communication, so that the actual strategic planning exercise isn't just about crafting a strategy, but it's about building a stronger leadership team, a more cohesive leadership team. And so that is actually how I think about strategic planning. Coming out of the end, yes, we'll have a plan, but we have a more successful, effective team that'll more likely communicate the plan to the organization,
Mm.
believe in it, execute it, overcome obstacles, deal with disagreements. That's kind of how I think about strategic planning. Not a process, but an organic way of building a stronger organization.
And so then from there, what's working, what's not with the next level or next layer, which is now we're getting into sort of the application of the strategy, i.e., we're changing a few things. So how do
Yeah.
you see transference happening in a positive way? And again, what are some things people should look out for, I suppose, right, for the potential roadblocks or hiccups?
Yeah, I think one of the things that come up a lot for me is the belief that once we get the strategic planning that plan done, all we have to do is email it to people, summarize it, and put it on the walls in our office. That
Yeah.
we're asking people to come back 5 days a week so they can read these things on the wall. In reality, we know this to be true. For people to really truly believe something or feel it in their heart, they've got to hear it a dozen times
Yeah.
in different formats and flavors. And I still think where we're getting it wrong is we're not talking enough. We're not engaging enough. We're not
Yeah.
communicating enough. We're not opening the floor for conversations to be challenged. When I'm trying to teach a course on building high performance teams, I try to help leaders think about different ways that they can invite disagreement, right? So I just did it the other day. Last week, I was teaching a course at the end of a session that I was delivering some things. I said, like, I want to create some space now. Who here doesn't buy what I'm laying down for you?
Yeah.
Is there anybody here that disagrees with any part of what I'm saying? And then you have to leave room for silence, right? Because people take time to wrestle with that idea. So then there was some silence, people were mumbling, and then finally somebody spoke up and they said, this whole thing you talked about, you know, um, creating psychological safety, I think it's really important. But the problem is, if we're just nice to each other all the time, then how do we, if it's not it's safe, then we can't conflict and we can't debate and I can't tell them what I think. Okay, that's great. That opened up the fact that I missed something in my
Yeah.
talking about psychological safety. And then it opened up a whole new conversation about the point of psychological safety is that so you can argue and debate and do these things. But in order to get there, I had to invite disagreement.
Hmm.
And I don't think we invite enough disagreement. So you can put a strategy out there, you can communicate it, but do we actually invite people to challenge it, question it, um, you know, think of it from a different perspective? And I think that's what leadership requires these days is setting the stage for people to um, make it okay to question you. And you might say, I'm okay with being questioned. I can handle it. But that might not be the signal we give out.
Hmm.
And so I think that needs to happen a lot more.
You're
That's what we're
speaking.
getting. I think that's what we're getting wrong. We're not inviting enough dissent.
I was going to say you're speaking like a true Greek in the Agora. You're a proponent of dialectical conversation, which is two-way administering debate in order
Mm-hmm.
to achieve, what is kind of Roger Martin's opposable mind thinking of two
Yeah,
ideas to get to a middle, even if
yeah,
there's dissension. Hopefully, the two are greater than the one separate kind of thing. Very
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
I'd be remiss, by the way, if I didn't end by asking you sort of when we talk about coaching and leadership and sort of how the litmus test of a leader is that also being a coach, or do you see coaching separate from leadership? I was just curious for people that listen in on your thoughts on the concepts of coaching as a leader, or is leader not about being a coach?
Oh, I think leader is 80% about being a coach.
Love
I
it.
really do. And I think the higher you get in an organization, the more that time should be in being a coach. Of course, I'm a professional coach and there are professional coaches out there, but I don't want to put professional coaches out of business. But if every leader had those skills as a coach, I think we'd have a much better world. We'd have much better places to work. I mean, I still think there's a place for professional coaches because those leaders eventually you'll hit a ceiling where they actually need coaching and they need advice and they need a safe space to go to outside of their organization. But I think coaching is leadership and leadership is coaching. Um, the fundamental premise of coaching is that the people you work with either have the answer to the problems that are in front of them or they are capable of finding the answer.
Mm,
So, as a leader, if you are approaching your team and your leadership with that belief that the people that I work with have the ability to solve their own problem or have the capability of finding the answer. And I'm going to lead them in a way that helps them do that. I'm going to build a stronger organization. I am going to build more confident people. I'm going to get home earlier for dinner first also. And I will build a brand as a leader that actually has a ripple effect in my workplace, in my organization, in my community, and hopefully this country. So that's you opened up a real hot topic for me. So thank you.
We're gonna have you back for a deeper dive on that one because, as I say, your legendary tantamount amount of expertise in those circles we talked about today. But I do want to dig deeper one day on your beliefs and how you action coaching as a leader. We need to get to that. Shakeel Bharmal, so CEO of Ocean Blue Strategic. Tell us where we can find more about you and what you're up to.
Well, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. Happy to connect with anybody that's interested, communicate with me there. I have to say, I've backed off Facebook and I'm on Instagram. I don't play there anymore. I mean, I have a profile because I don't want to lose all those photographs I have,
Obviously.
but I'm not active and engaging in those places. So the best place to really find me is LinkedIn. I have a podcast, the Navigating Disruption podcast. You can get it on Apple. Just search my name, search Navigating Disruption. You'll find it. And that's pretty much. And I love getting into conversations like this. So there's a few podcasts I'm out on with other people. You can find those as well.
Amazing. Well, this is the first of a few chats, I think, between you and I on this particular one. Thank you for doing this. And again, I appreciate our partnership and most importantly, our friendship over the last few years and many more to come.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan.
All right. So, everyone, Shakeel Bharmal, CEO of Ocean Blue Strategic, incredibly inspiring guy. Go check out a bunch of his things that he's up to these days in various mediums. And thank you for watching and or listening to another episode of Leadership Now.